Hi, this is Dan Jenks. I'm here with Mark Lawrence, and we are here to show you the financial model we put together for District 112 as part of the Reconfiguration Team 2.0. When you open the model in Excel, this is the first page that you will see. Basically, this page shows how the district is currently operating. If you look right here, all 12 buildings are open. These are variables you can change. We currently don't offer full-day kindergarten, and we have 20 or more sections per elementary grade. As you can see up here, you can see that our fund balance falls below 25% as of 2019. And basically, the district has a policy that its total funds divided by expenditures in any given year should not be below 25%. And you can see graphically on this graph that you fall below that 25% mark right here on the path that we're going on. You also see that the year after 2019, we actually run out of money. And this is almost entirely due to the large backlog in capital work that the district has to do. Now, the model allows you to make changes. One of the things we'll look at right now is what the district looks like under BDR3. And if you go up here, one of the things that we the Finance Committee, have focused on is looking at the fund surplus or shortfall as of 2030. We picked the year 2030 because it's sort of like a Goldilocks. It's not too near, it's not too far away, it's sort of just right and in between. And we've discovered after playing around with this model that if you go much beyond that point, you really get into some speculative sorts of results. We also believe, however, that if you come in 4 or 5 years closer, you're really not understanding the true level of financial sustainability. But I wanted to point out to you right here, the fund balance as of June 30th, 2030, you have a shortfall of basically almost $92 million. What does this $92 million mean? It means that if you want to have a 25% fund balance in 2030, you would need another additional nearly $92 million to make that happen.
It's the equivalent of the gap between the red line on the graph and the blue line. So it's the amount you're falling short or that you're going above the red line.
That's exactly right, and here it is graphically. That's a great way to explain it. It's this gap of $92 million. Actually, it's over here at 2030. So now we're going to look at what happens if the district implements BDR3, and how does that affect this graph. BDR3, as many of you know, it involves closing 4 buildings in fiscal year 2018. That's the fall of 2017. Elm Place, and you can close all of these buildings just by clicking on the side here and clicking closed. It also involves closing Green Bay, and click closed. Lincoln, closed, and Ravinia, closed. Now you can see a major change in what has happened. Oh, and we also, I should say, we are also reducing the number of sections down to 18 elementary school sections district-wide. So by making these changes, you can see that our fund balance, our shortfall at 2030 has gone from a negative $92 million to now we have a surplus of so now you can see in this chart here that by closing these 4 schools and by choosing 18 sections elementary school, that we have a positive fund balance of $50 million. It means $50 million over the 25% in 2030, which is basically, you go from this blue line down to this red line, that's the amount of money that we have, which you could consider almost an excess, a surplus. And you can see that these 2 lines don't cross until 2039. actually 2040, the fund balance goes negative in 2040. So that's for purposes of a projection, that's basically almost eternity.
So the other important thing is that you can see on the graph the actual number for where the fund balance is at the end of fiscal 2016, which is June of 2016, and it's about 44 million. That's the blue line. So that doesn't change as you go through the model and you toggle various assumptions. It is not the same if you look at the district's financial statements as the amount of cash the district has on June 30th, 2016. Because of the way property taxes are collected, we get some prepayments of money that will be spent over the course of the year, and there have been some comments recently about, well, we have more like 70 or 80 million dollars of cash, but we're looking at the actual fund balance, which is not simply reflecting prepayment and collection of property taxes on a certain cycle. So the correct number now to start is 44 million.
And you can see here, even under BDR3, another interesting point is that you can see that the fund balance actually declines slightly. BDR3 is a tremendous way of saving money. You save operating costs, but you also save capital expenditure costs in the buildings that are closing. But because we've had such a large backlog, even after closing all those schools for the first couple of years, until this backlog is taken care of, you see some deficit spending, some very small $500,000 to $1 million deficit spending through 2020, and then you see the surplus really start to grow. Now, you might ask yourself, okay, BDR3, what happens if we decided that we wanted to offer full-day kindergarten? Well, you could go up to this tab right here and select yes for full-day kindergarten. Full-day kindergarten costs about $1.2 million a year. And you can see the curve changes, and instead of having a surplus of $50 million in 2030, our surplus goes down to around $29 million. You should note with the example of full-day kindergarten that we may be able to afford full-day kindergarten under a particular model, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there is space available for it under that model. Now that we've added full-day kindergarten in this model, we may also want to say, well, let's play around with the number of elementary school sections. What happens if we had 19 versus 18 sections? And if we go to this cell, we can change it to 19, and you can see that knocks the surplus down another $8 or $9 million down to $21 million. So that's basically the front sheet. You can play around and you can close or open as many of these schools as you would like to in coming up with your reconfiguration. One thing to tell you is that this model is designed for either having 6, 7, or 8 elementary schools or 2 or 3 middle schools, and then deciding whether you want to keep open or close Green Bay. If you close more than 2 elementary schools, or if you come up with a model that closes 2 middle schools, you're not going to capture the operating savings. You'll still capture the capital expenditure savings from closing that particular extra school, but you won't capture any operating savings. So there are other assumptions here that we can modify, revenue and expense, and we'll go down and take a look at those. Here we have our revenue assumptions. We have change in consumer price index. This is a very important driver of the district's revenues, and we have the percentage of new construction in the district. Taking together, when you add these two percentages, places a cap on how much the district's revenues can grow in a particular year. So, for example, in 2018, you take 0.7 plus 0.5, the district's revenues can only grow at 1.2%. 2019, it would be estimated 1.5 plus 0.5, that's 2%. We also have state aid, which in this model is held flat. You can play around with that if you want. We have federal aid, and then we have a couple of other smaller categories, which I'm not going to get into here. We have an interest rate assumption down here on the funds that the district is keeping, and if you have a view of what interest rates are going to be, you can modify these interest rates. This interest rate, Mark can tell us, is determined based on a market basis. It's
Yeah, the interest rate assumption just represents the current market for the current forward market for short-term interest rates. So it's the LIBOR curve taken from the Euro-dollar futures market, and with some adjustments for a difference between the types of instruments the school district would likely be investing in as compared to the LIBOR rate, which is coming from the Euro-dollar curve. So it's essentially the forward interest rate curve, and like Dan said, if you have a view that's different than the market, you can type that into the interest rate assumption. One thing I want to clarify, though, is the CPI, which is a very important, very important variable in the model. If you're looking at what is in the model and trying to compare that to the actual CPI, for example, for the 12 months ended June 2018, you will not get the same number that's in the model. There is a lag of a couple years by the time it trickles into the tax levy and gets collected by the district. So the number, I think that 70 basis points in 2018 is actually already known, is it not?
I think that's right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so you have to be careful when you're looking at that assumption that it may be lagged by 18 months to 2 years.
2 years, that's right. The other assumptions going down here, we have salary, medical insurance, special education, purchase services growth, educational capital expenditures. The big ones, the big expenditure drivers for the district are the salaries, followed by medical insurance, followed by purchase service growth. And we'll come back to the salary increase in a second to show you an example of how sensitive the model is to changes in the salary increase. And then we've assumed in this model going forward, and historically we've adjusted capital expenditures for what we understand to be historical and our best guess of future inflation rates for construction. And you can see that here with the 3% in these blue cells. Finally, let's go back and look at what happens and just do a what if we increase salary increase from 2% to, let's say, 3% for 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. Let's see what happens to the model. So you just type in 0.03, 0.03, 0.03, 0.03. So this is basically 2020 is when there'll be a new contract, and you could hypothetically say, well, what happens if the increase is 3%, not 2%? Let's go look and see what happens up here. Up here you can see that our fund balance has fallen from $21 million to about just under $1 million as of June 30th, 2030. So that's a significant shortfall. Now the final thing I want to do is let's look at changing 2 years of new construction, and if we change that to let's see 0.01 in 2019 from 0.5% to 1%, and we do the same thing in 2020, you can see that the curve bends up quite a bit. And now we have a fund balance surplus at 2030 of $10 million. So very small change in some of these variables has a very large impact on our financial sustainability. So Mark and I wish you well with this model. If you have any questions, you can send an email to rt2.0model@gmail.com. We also will be hosting a workshop at the district's offices to explain this model more and to help people use it. Thanks so much.